Oh, hey, fancy meeting you here. What you up to? Me? Oh, I just relaxing. Um, I've been thinking, and I've been playing this series, Final Fantasy. You might have heard of it, and I've really been enjoying my time with it. And I've had a lot of things on my mind, and I really wanted just to gush about it and talk and share my opinion on some stuff. And till now, starting with one, obviously, you have to start from the beginning. There hasn't been much of anything to talk about. Yeah, I can talk about like the history of Final Fantasy 1 or 2 or 3. And yeah, I'm aware that they're technical masters of their time. Their whole story of saving Square and turning him into the giant there right now, two's innovative fighting system and experience gain, and three's job changing. I'm aware that all of that is important. Yet, I am much more focused on the stories of these games. They really mean a lot to me, and I've wanted to dissect or maybe break down one of the games. And I've recently just played and finished 4, and I think that that game actually gives me something to work with and something to talk about. And if you would indulge me, I would really like to share my opinions and thoughts on Final Fantasy IV. And if you would so be willing, grab a snack, get something to drink, and let me ramble on for a little bit about a game that I really enjoyed. Let's get this from the top. I believe that Final Fantasy IV is first and foremost a story about atonement. It is about the journey of a young man from a warrior of darkness to a pure and honest hero who does right by the people that he has wronged and deals with the mistakes that he has committed in his past. It is the story of Cecil Harvey, and I believe that through exploring Cecil and his beginnings, his connections to the other party members and cast of Final Fantasy IV, we can really get a holistic and a complete idea of this story. And this will be basically my breakdown of Cecil and how he changes throughout the story and how he becomes the hero who is capable of saving the world and who is able to lend himself to the aid of his comrades and save them and atone for what he has done. That is not me implying that Cecil is the first character to deal with these themes or to have such a character arc. Even in the same game, there are other characters that have a similar journey to his, but I can't but admire what the creators of this game were able to accomplish with the limitations that they were given. Mind you, this game came out on the SNES, and I also believe that Cecil himself, he carries his role in the story well than enough to put him leagues above all of the other protagonists of Final Fantasy that came before him. Granted, his only competition is Firion, and I love Firion. He is great, an amazing fighter in Dissidia, but yeah, you know what I mean. But to understand the story of Cecil, and with it the story of FF4, we need to go over a few things that I wish to discuss, that I think that are important. To go over the beginning. How does this game start? What does it give us to work with? What can it tell us about these characters and who does it want us to focus on? Then I want us to go over the other party members individually and how they relate to Cecil and how their arcs can mirror his and can influence his arc. And finally, obviously, I really want to talk about Gobez and his influence over Cecil, his connections to him, and how their stories overlap and basically follow the same beats with different and yet similar conclusions. And finally, at the end, obviously I wanna, put my 2 cents on what I think makes these characters what they are and what's the standout feature of 4, but with that said, I think it's time for us to From the very beginning of this game, we are met by people that are ashamed of their actions. We see that Cecil, the captain of Baron's esteemed Red Wings, is being confronted by his own men and questioned whether them taking the water crystal from Mycedia by force whenever its people didn't even put up a fight to defend it was the right thing to do, regardless of it being an order from their king or not. And Cecil seemingly struggles to answer their concerns, but it's quickly interrupted by a monstrous attack, which then would lead us on to them arriving at the castle and stuff happening there. And even though we aren't exactly shown what these people have done, this short and brief introduction shows us that whoever this Cecil person is, he is a person of higher standing within the military of his nation. So a person that is not above resorting to violence to accomplish his or his nation's goals. B. He had a task assigned to him by a figure of authority, someone who will be shown he has a great amount of respect and admiration towards, and C. that he isn't at all fine with their actions, shown by his concern and regret over their actions, but as their superior, he has to maintain some sort of an order, some sort of structure within his troops, and has to reassure his men that the king probably had a good reason for this. And this really serves to show us that Cecil is truly trying to convince himself of their actions and to reassure himself that their actions were justified. That is what lays the groundwork for his development and would influence him in his actions later on in the story. This is also from where we start and build up to the rest of this journey, and this will be a large factor of Cecil's idea of who he should be, what he as this leader of people should strive to be, and how he should lead and how he should react in these type of scenarios, whether to follow his own judgment or to merely abide by the orders given to him. Yet, as to be expected at the start of Cecil's journey, he is far from the ideal warrior who he wishes to be and is, for a lack of a better word, kind of spineless. He himself admits as much when a bit after returning and being dismissed by the king, he opens up to Rosa about how he was too much of a coward to stop himself and his men, and this is the first time that Cecil truly opens up to someone, both in the story but also by proxy to us, the players, of how he feels, and that regardless of whatever depth that he may have to the king, the one for whom he learned the way of the Dark Knight, that he should have probably stopped the senseless culling of the Mycedians, and clearly what happened there weighs heavily on him, and the pain will only grow larger with what's soon to happen. But this moment also serves to show us the truly kinder interior and true visage of Cecil. It gives us a glimpse under that frowning dark helmet of his that he is truly someone who would much rather prefer to defend and protect his people instead of going on the offensive or going on and attacking some innocent people. And were it not for this bit early on, we might have, if we only had the gameplay to rely on, we would have thought that Seso is this headstrong warrior who is willing to sacrifice himself for power and for more gain, seeing that his darkness ability in game sacrifices his HP to increase his attack power. But even early on, the developers want us to see that he is much more of a person who would sacrifice himself, yes, but in the sense that he wants to end the fighting as quickly as possible so that he can protect the ones he cares for, not that he is power hungry or anything like that, which I think is a really neat touch. But moving on, I would really want to also mention just for a moment that if you haven't noticed by the gameplay behind me, I played the 3D remake of Final Fantasy IV, which included voiced cutscenes, which I think greatly elevate the moments in which they're included, mainly the major story progressions, pre-boss fight, major bosses, interactions, and also character deaths. And yes, I'm aware and I've seen and heard better. I still think that it was good enough, it was serviceable, and it did not detract from my experience of the Final Fantasy IV experience, which it might have some kind of like a influence over me in how I have read into these characters. Maybe if it was just simply by text and I had to read it, maybe I would have read it in a way that would like describe it in a different way or give it a different feeling or a meaning. But from my experience with the 3D remake, this is what I am thinking of these characters as, and this is the voices by which I now associate with them. I just want to mention that it might have some slight change in my opinion due to that, but yeah. Moving on from here, the story quickly ramps up when Seso and his brother-in-arms, Kay and Highwind, are given an order from the king to deliver a ring to a town of the summoners to the northwest of Baron, because apparently Seso's showing of concern was somehow indicative of him being not trustworthy anymore by the king for their like grand mission, and he was demoted from captain of the Red Wings. And so, for him to regain his lost title, he will have to prove himself yet again. And the two of them go on their little journey. They go through a cave, defeat a dragon, no big deal, you know, we have a dragoon over there, that's kind of his thing. And on the other side, they arrive at the village of the summoners, where they just have to talk to like their leader, their village chief, and everything will be fine. Obviously, nothing can go wrong, right?
The ring! This is what we were sent to do?
He wished this village torched.
But why? Why?
I feel that there is no need for me to say this, but for a story to be about atonement, that implies that there must be actions that to atone for, and the destruction of the Summoner village is something that sticks with both Seso and us, the players, not only because we are the ones who delivered the insignia ring, but also
Mother, you can't die just because your dragon did.
I've heard of their lot. Men who can conjure eidolons. Summoners.
Then the dragon we slew was her mother's?
You're the ones who killed her dragon?
Forgive us. We had no idea this would happen to your mother.
His Majesty sent us to eliminate every last one of these people.
This, yeah, far more than the initial introduction and exposition, is where I think that a large portion of Cecil's guilt and desire to fight the forces of Baron stems from. It is. It's one thing to go and collect a powerful magical artifact because you believe that it could be used as a weapon against you and your nation. Another is the unprompted destruction of an entire village full of people who had done nothing against you. On top of the fact that now a little girl is left an orphan by your very own hands. It is there, from that fire, that the Cecil that didn't have the courage to stop at Mycedia and it wasn't able to speak up to his king is finally able to break through that naive delusion that he was doing all this for a better cause, and with some encouraging words from Cain, Cecil sets his eyes on stopping Baron and doing whatever he can to atone for this terrible action that he has committed on these people. Though the consequences of that very thing are soon to follow when, out of anger and fear for her life, this little girl, Rydia, summons Titan to split the ground beneath Cecil and Cain due to some really out of place remarks on Cain's part, really, but you could have thought of it something else to do. And Cecil and Cain are split, and Cecil wakes up to find himself with this little girl in front of him, unconscious, and him helping her and carrying her over across a desert to the town of Kaipo to help her and to get her checked in is where we truly begin Final Fantasy IV. Everything before that, I believe, is the prologue of this tale, and it serves to highlight the most important characters of this story. We have Cecil, Cain, Rydia, Rosa is there as well, which is very important for both Cain and Cecil. And it is from here on where the party will grow larger very quickly, and a lot of things will happen one after the other, and it would be Cecil and Rydia's shaky truce that will be the beginning, and it will be the thing that will grow and will develop into a strong bond of mutual trust and respect between one another, but that will have to wait until we talk about Rydia again soon. But I think that right about wraps it up for the beginning, and I think it's ready for us to go to part 2 of this little analysis. So, Tellah, the old mage, the strongest black wizard, and yet, somehow, the most pitiful of all the cast members in this game. And I'm not saying this as to imply that he is some kind of a weakling. No, I mean it as literally pitiful. I pity this old man. He lost his one thing that he loved, his daughter. He is almost a laughable representation of the hate that one could feel towards another, even if they've never met them. He is a clear reflection of the hatred that Cecil has inside of him for a large majority of this story towards Golbez, this figment, this entity of immeasurable power that they have to overcome. But back to Tellah. His whole arc of searching for the strongest spell, Meteor, his ability of remembering, he is someone who had great amount of power in his youth, in his prime, and he is no worse for wear as he is right now, and all he wants to achieve this power again so that he can make Golbez pay. But in searching of that power, in searching of that revenge, he is blinded to everything else happening around him. When he meets with Edward, he blames him for the death of his daughter, and even after realizing and learning of how she died and why, he also wants to get revenge for her and avenge her death. He only tries to spur him on to go and chase after more power, and then fucks off somewhere, to whom knows where, maybe to my city or something, to some grand library to search through ancient tomes for these powers that he's apparently lacking in. And he is completely dismissive of the one person who would in other circumstances be his son-in-law, even if they share in their pain. But he is also the one who shows us the futility of hate and searching for revenge at all cost, coming back to face Gomez one more time, finally realizing his latent potential and regaining that power, Meteor. He's able to cast it, and yet knowing the cost is his own life, he does it. He unleashes that powerful spell, and yes, it is effective against Gomez, but he is so much more powerful than Tela that the spell doesn't do the job. He shakes it off, he stands back up, and Tela, in his old age, cannot take it. He cannot muster the strength to resist Meteor, and he pays the price for it. Somewhere in the middle of this story, Cecil is told by the Sage of Mysidia that if he were to carry on being a Dark Knight, he would surely meet his end at the hands of Gomez, as a power gained by hatred and sacrificing yourself or others is exactly the type of power that Gomez himself is a master of. He knows those arts, he can take them, he is prepared for them, and the Dark Knight is just someone who cannot defeat Gomez. And so Cecil learns and grows from his mistakes. He goes and faces Gomez as someone who has the desire to protect and not the desire to destroy. Not by hatred does he face Gomez and overcomes him, but by compassion, by relying on others. That is what Tela is in this story to me. He is the cautionary tale of chasing revenge at all costs, and how if you are going for revenge, you should probably dig two graves, one for the person you want to kill and one for yourself. It is sad, really, but let's move on. And who else to move on to but Edward himself. Oh, one of two Edwards. The one that I'm referring to is obviously Edward Chris von Muir. Well, the bard, obviously. He is many things actually. Not only a bard, but he's a royal, he's a lover, he's maybe a coward, a poet. He is a brave individual, in my book, who, even though lacking in his physical stature and his expertise with weapons, is one of the most sensible and complete characters emotionally. His arc is pretty much done halfway through the story, or even earlier, when the party returns to Kaipo to wake up Rosa from her slumber. Yeah, that happens, it's its own whole thing, but he has an encounter with the spirit of Anna, his lost love. And I'm not gonna spoil what happens in that scene, but maybe it is because Edward is a more emotional, more vulnerable person than Tela. He's younger, he feels the passion of love still within him. He wants to take revenge for Anna, yes, but in the same time he can grieve. He expresses his sadness way more openly and with way more nuance than the old sage, who can only express rage and at the abhorrent actions of Gomez. whilst Edward looks inward, he looks for introspection, he looks towards Anna and what she would have wanted for him and how she would have wanted him and her to live. It is in this sense that he is a prince who lost his kingdom and he is a lover who lost his love. It is in that point where we meet him, and it is that to which he connects with Cecil. He offers to help the party because he can connect to Cecil. He can understand the desire to save the person you love. Because, yes, he might have lost his Anna, but Cecil still has his. He has Rose and he can help him. He can help another wayward soul in the quest to save their love. Cecil and Edward are way more alike. Well, it is more apparent towards the ending of the game, but Cecil becomes a king and Edward and him can share in the idea of leading their people. They have to be strong, they have to be the leaders that their nations look up to. They are the ones that they will be shown as example, and it is both of them who share in this deep understanding of love and wanting to protect the ones they cherish and their legacy. Later on, Edward is responsible for helping the party overcome the elves from the cave when the party cannot go over and break through his magical barrier. It is through the thing that he does best, through Edward's songs, that he helps them. Even from far away, his spirit is always with them. Even when he cannot physically accompany them and help them, he is by their side. He is a prince. He is someone who in another tale would have been the main character of the tale. He would have been the prince on a quest to avenge his lost lover, but he is not that type of person. He is not someone who would leave everything behind in search of power or vengeance. He's way more mature, he's way more in tune with his feelings and emotions, and he's able to reflect and move on from the pain he has inside of him. He shows the rest of the party a more peaceful resolution, another way for them to deal with their grief. And even after he leaves, him and Cecil are still fast friends. They still interact with each other, and I'm sure that their two kingdoms are in great relationships post the game of Final Fantasy IV. But that is for another time, and we still have a lot of party members to go over, so let's go on to the next one, shall we? Yang is someone who I believe that at the time of his introduction is one of the most crucial members of this crew for the growth and development of Cecil. It is by Yang's example that Cecil can be reminded of something that he lost very early on in this tale. Yang is a leader. He is a soldier. He is someone who leads his own squad and he defends his kingdom. Not too unlike Cecil at the beginning of this game. He is this Grandmaster monk who would lead his men from the front, showing them what to do by example, not only by barking orders, and he is this way to everybody. He is this way when he's with the party. He is this way whenever he has forgotten his memories and he's taken in by Baron. He is always someone who would take the lead so that those who are unsure could follow and fasten themselves to his stubbornness. He is a great reminder of what a true leader, a true soldier should be. He is the one who shows Cecil the ideal soldier that he once admired, the one type of person that he wanted to be. And together with Yang, they are pretty much the oldest members of the cast for a large majority of this tale, ignoring Tella and maybe Rose and Kane, alright, and Sid, but Rydia, Porom, Polom, those are kids, and it is their shared responsibility to look after them. They have to take care of these kids, and Yang is always there, be it in spirit or physically, to defeat the enemies in front of them. He is unshaken, he never doubts himself. He's one of the few characters in this story that purely knows what he wants and what he needs to do. He always has his eyes set on the goal, and that is something that Cecil truly takes to. I believe that him and Yang could really take solace in the fact that they're both military people who can understand one another. They can work with each other without having to utter as much as a word to one another. And with what Yang does for the party later on, he saves everyone. An act that would not be too dissimilar to anything that Cecil or Kane would do. And post that, when he's unable to fight on, he is still trying to join the party. His body being wrecked is nothing that could stay in the way of the great Yang. Well, maybe only one thing could stay in his way, but that's the weakness of every man now, isn't it? But yeah, Yang is a great person, and I truly enjoy his character and gameplay. His ability is great, his focus, showing his determination and his ability to isolate the enemy and just focus on concentrating his power is really intriguing, really cool. But other than that, he is this old, grizzled up general, leader type of mentor who Cecil deeply needed to reaffirm who he could be and who he wants to be. And it is someone in whose footsteps later on he would walk, and he would share in that experience and in the way that he was shown by Yang how to lead and how to pass on his knowledge. And going on from there, that only leaves only one old man to talk about. The Resident Sid of Final Fantasy IV. Would it really be a Final Fantasy game without a Sid? Now, truly. And in this game, Sid is he is Sid? Well, he is loud and obnoxious, but he has an airship named the Enterprise and should probably spend more time with his family than fighting on the battlefield. But if we're talking about useful characters, you don't get much more useful than the guy without whom half of the game wouldn't be happening because nobody could get anywhere. Sid is far more defined in this game by what he isn't than what he is. He's a royal engineer, yet he's fighting on the front lines. He looks like he could bite your head off, yet all he does is make bad jokes and pushes himself far too much for someone his age. Sid is a jolly person who has always been there for Cecil, and were it not for the King of Baron, who adopted Cecil, he would probably be the closest thing to an actual father figure that Cecil had growing up. And in keeping with that, under all of that crass humor and round belly, even though I know he was absolutely yoked in the OG art, that's just what age does to a man, I apologize, look at Arnie. But Sid is a man who's lived a long and a happy life. All he does and why he is so adamant on fighting and keeping up with the parties, because he cares for these young guys, he wants them to have the same. Almost to not be outdone by Yang, that guy straps himself with an explosive, jumps off of a flying airship, and blows an entire cavern on top of himself and their enemies that pursue them to the surface. You don't get much cooler than that, alright? He really helps out Cecil along his way, be it physically fighting by his side or supporting him and Rosa when they needed it. He truly is the sort of guardian that one should strive to be and who we all need in our lives.
Try stopping this, Lopez! My once-in-a-lifetime unaided fly!
Oh yeah, here we go with the actual important ones. Hey, I'm joking. Obviously everybody is important, but Porom and Polom, like fire and water and salt and sugar, they're polar opposites yet as much a mirror image of one another as to a different pair of siblings in this game. They are something that you don't know you needed in this tale until they're gone. It is these two little bundles of joy that aid Cecil during the time in this game which I think is its lowest point. After the entire cast gets split by Leviathan on their like trip towards like Mycedia, thank you buddy, awesome move, couldn't have done it without you, you know, greatness. But getting on point, when Cecil was all alone, completely, and had to seek refuge with the people he heard the most from the beginning of the story, and we finally get to go to Mycedia, it is there where the aforementioned speech about the Dark Knight not being strong enough to defeat Gobez is had, and to help him on his way, the Elder tells Cecil about this mountain trial, mountain ordeal that he has to go to hopefully, possibly become a paladin, someone who can fight off Gobez, and to help him on his journey and also to look after him and to monitor him in case something bad happens. He also sends Porom and Polom. And yes, given their small stature, you would think that they couldn't do much, but with Polom's destructive dark magic and Porom's use of the healing white magic, they are a formidable duo, and with Twincast, anything they wanna do and destroy will be turned to ashes if they wanted it. So yeah, they are more than an adequate replacement for our party members, at least gameplay wise, but what they are, far more than anything in gameplay, they are the hope, they are what could be. They are kids who only bicker with each other and seem to be having fun. Well, Polom is having a lot of fun. Porom has to deal with Polom, so, you know, give or take. But they are there for Cecil when he transitions to the paladin vocation, his job, his thing that defines him. And it is in that moment when he learns to rely on others, he learns that he has to rely on them to deal with the enemies. He has to protect them, yes, but it is up to them to actually deal with the foe standing before them. Not that Cecil is powerless all of a sudden, but it is not his place to be the one to destroy their enemies. He can leave that to the people who can actually specialize in that and can deal with things that he could not on his own. And without them, this game would feel like a spiral towards self-pity and anger. And they're the ones that help us through this most difficult of times. But as they shine brightly and, you know, the lighter a candle burns, the quicker it fades out, their time in the limelight has to come to an end, seeing as Polom and Porom are occupying positions in the party that were already taken. They sacrificed themselves for their friends' quest to continue when they were entrapped in a room with no exit as wolves were pushing ever closer to turn them into red paste. Porom and Polom, seemingly for the first time in their life, agree on one thing: they have to save everyone. They use a powerful spell to willingly turn themselves into statues so that they can stop the walls from encroaching and crushing everyone. It is in that moment that I believe they truly represent the pair of brothers at the center of this tale. Were it them in this situation, Cecil and Theodore would have done the exact same thing. They would have done everything in their power to help their allies and the people they care for. And, in keeping with that theming, it is not permanently this stone skin that they have to wear, for the Elder of Mycedia comes and releases them, in a very much similar way how Cecil's uncle Fusoya does for Theodore later on, but that is something that you have to wait a little bit more till we get there, alright? Alright. As I've mentioned before, Rosa is that special someone for Cecil. She's the one that helps him keep moving forward, and she's the one that from the very beginning sees through his dark disguise, through his dark armor, and she sees him for the truly kind and even a little silly person that Cecil is actually. She understands him and she deeply cares for him. And from the moment she joins the group to the very last boss, Rosa is the one to keep everybody on their feet, be it in gameplay with her white magic or in the story helping everybody. Like, she helps Cecil, Kane, Sid and Rydia by being there for them, forgiving them, healing their ailments and protecting them when they needed it. It is in her nature, the thing that defines her kindness and understanding. It is that which she passes on to Cecil. She cares for him, and that kindness and care is not unnoticed by him. He truly cherishes her and he wants to be with her. That is why he tells her to stay behind on the blue planet when they get the lunar whale and are able to go to the moon to have a final showdown with Golbez, for all they know. And yes, he is frustrated that she stayed behind and came with them, but he's also relieved. Her help is something that he really holds dear to him, and be it for her white magic or for her support, she is an invaluable member without whom they wouldn't have been able to go this far and wouldn't have been able to deal with Golbez or Zimes or Zero Mus for that matter. But it is those feelings and that care that which she shows to everybody that is also the catalyst for the greatest of divides in this story, and it is the reason that there is a wedge driven between two of the most important members of this tale, between Cecil and Kane. And thus, that leads us to this guy. Honestly, he might be in my contention for my favorite character in this entire game. I see why he was put in as the symbol of Final Fantasy IV before the 3D remake, that is, before Golbez to that spot, but he is the brother that stood side by side with Cecil. They knew each other since when they were kids, and he's the one person that Cecil saw as his equal and the one to confide in and to rely on in his times of need. But Kane is someone who has put an enormous amounts of expectation upon himself to live up to his father's legacy as the captain of the Royal Dragoon Squad, and to be able to keep up with Cecil, to win the affection of the one he loves. For him, Cecil and Rosa are the one thing he holds dear to his heart. But the closer something is to your heart, it's so much easier for it to hurt that heart. For no fault of his own or of anyone for that matter, Rosa just chose Cecil over him. How he would have loved to be happy for them, and he really wished and thought he could, but his heart ached every time they interacted and he saw them together, saw them interact. But he would never be able to do anything about it. His feelings were locked away deep in his heart as to not ruin what he already had. It's something that I think that a lot of people can relate to and can understand Kane to some extent. That's what sealed his fate though. It was those confided feelings that Golbez used to manipulate Kane, to get inside of his head and turn him on his allies, making him steal the crystals just for him to have a chance to be with Rosa. It is a mark of great shame that he bears for long after the credits of this game roll, and even into the events of the after years and in the time between those games. But still, Kane had none to truly speak, to whom to share in his pain, for it was his closest people that caused him the greatest of pain, the ones who he cherishes the most, and it is this weakness, his fall, that will be the catalyst for his growth. It would be the obstacle that he needs to overcome, for when his brother in arms and the woman he loves were in danger, he arrived. Kane always had the strength to overcome the control of the Dark Wizard, to break those shackles placed upon him, but he needed his friends, he needed those people next to him to give him the strength to do it. And even if he had betrayed them twice, in fact, he had the courage to admit it. He had the strength to speak to them. Well, maybe not with his words, but with his actions, and to pay them back for what he had done, to the world and the danger he placed it in. He goes on to become someone far greater than the starting selfish dragoon who was so easily taken over by his bottled up emotions, to a person who can truly be someone of his own making, who can truly be happy for his best friend and the person who he once loved. That is who I see in Kane, and I really enjoy him as a character. And because him and Cecil were truly equals in physical might and in emotional strength, had Cecil not had a Rosa, a Sid, a Yang, a Pollum, an Edward, he probably would have been susceptible to the same manipulation. Were the position switched, were Rosa to choose Kane over Cecil, I'm damn sure that beginning of the story Cecil would have been an easy child's play for Gobez to manipulate the same way he manipulated Kane. And that's why I think that he deserved to be the emblem of Final Fantasy IV when the game was created. He is one of the most well-realized characters, seeing as how he is one of the weakest and most vulnerable individuals for a large majority of the game. I think that well then justifies his existence in the story and his role in it, and how much of a part he is in the development of Cecil, Rosa and Rydia. And yeah, I actually like Kane. I really enjoyed his character. Well, it would appear that we finally made it back. An entire circle of characters, just to come back to Rydia. Truly, I believe that we needed to go over everybody else, just so I can truly talk about Rydia in the way that I see and what I think about her. Rydia truly is an invaluable member of this cast, because for someone to atone, and as I said before, they need something to atone for, but also there must be another side of things. There must be those who have been wronged, and their side of this conflict and of this process is just as, if not more important than the actions of those who want to atone. Because Rydia was truly traumatized by what happened to her. She was just a little girl at the start of this game. She had no idea what was going on about crystals, about darkness, about Zemes, about Gobez. She was just a child, and one day in her village bombs appear and buildings start burning. Her mother collapses on the ground because her connection Eidolon was slain. What is one to do in that situation? And then the people responsible for it start talking about how they should put her out of her misery? Needless to say, Rydia goes through a lot. And though the game tries its damnedest to show it, I believe that it It could not have been done justice at that time when the game was made. But even with that said, I believe that in this game, Final Fantasy IV, she was given the best arc she could have been given at that time. Rydia, when she comes back from her tenure in the world of the Eidolons, where time passes differently, she is almost a completely different person from the little girl we send off at the start of that whole event. Before that, yes, she was traumatized, but even then she had the power to overcome her fear of fire and use it to melt the ice wall blocking their way. That was just a hint of what she was capable of, because Rydia truly had the potential to be one of the greatest summoners in all Final Fantasy history. Her prowess, her power, her latent potential was there all along. As a child, she was summoning Eidolons like Titan. When she came back, she truly had the means to get her revenge on Cecil and Kain. She had the power over them. She could have easily dealt with them the same way she had the power to stand up to Gobez. Someone who was able to overcome Meteor, stand up from it and deal with it. Rydia, with the power of the Eidolon, surpassed that power that Tella spent the entirety of the game chasing after. Grown-up Rydia, who I'll just refer to as Rydia from now on, is someone who has an immense power within her, be it actually with her magic and gameplay, and with her role in the story. She's the one who dictates the atonements of Cecil and of Kain. It is by her relationship to them and theirs to her that each of those characters grows. She realizes and is able to understand what happened and that things just happen. She was able to forgive Cecil and stand shoulder to shoulder with him. They were truly partners in that part of the game, and from then on, she was able to relate to Rosa. She was able to understand her. She was able to understand the pains of Edward and the other Edward. It always cracks me up. But she, for all of her power, I see her as way more powerful emotionally than she is physically. And it is that inner strength that allows her to prove herself to the Eidolon king and queen, and then even their forefather, Bahamut. She has, in my opinion, a truly deep and emotional arc buried somewhere in that pile of text boxes and of corny dialogue that is FF4 at its core. And I truly am happy to have seen her grow and mature and to be able to experience her story. And from that point on, since the end of 4, I look forward to seeing what happens with her and in the after years and what she will do and where would the creators take her from then on. Well, lastly but not leastly, we have Edward, the Prince of Eblan, not to be confused with Edward, the Prince of Damshine, who we talked about earlier on, if you remember. Yeah, that guy, the bard, yeah. Weird, but from now on, let's refer to this Edward as Edge, the moniker by which he's more well known of, and focus on what actually makes him special and unique in comparison with the rest of the cast. But I suppose him and the rest of the cast actually are way more important to each other, or well, the rest of the cast is more important to him than on first glance actually. Because even though he is not connected to any of them by blood or by any meaningful narrative connections, they actually are very important to him, even if he does not realize it. Because Edge is in the exact same predicament when we find him to the rest of the cast earlier on in the game. We find Edge in a situation that we're well familiar with at this point in the game. He wants revenge this time against Rubicante in particular, the fiend, the fire, who destroyed his kingdom and is chasing their people and kidnapped his parents. And were it not for Rydia's crying, which lets him, reflect and mellow down and not wanting her to keep crying, he agrees to join them. Yeah, it's weird, it's silly, I don't know why they did it like that, but the important part is he allows them to accompany him, or him to accompany them, because with their help, he is able to do what every one of them wanted to do. He is able to take revenge on the person who wronged him. He represents the part of this whole narrative that I've been spinning of he actually manages to take revenge. He actually manages to defeat the evil person standing on the other side who wronged him, who is not ashamed of his actions. He faces Rubicante, and yes, even though he lost the first time, by allowing other people to help him, by allowing them to teach him and guide him, he is their final test. He is their final obstacle to overcome, to prove that they've learned something throughout the course of this game. They each help him in their own way, most of which Rydia, who can truly relate to someone who lost their home and his parents. She's there for him in a way that he really needed, and in a way that she needed at that time, in a way that Cecil was for her in a way. And about Cecil, he and Edge are similar in the fact that Edge is the warrior who manages to overcome that evil in the same way that Cecil wished to. And Cecil leads him in a way that allows his anger and emotions to flow out of him naturally, so that they don't overcome him and they don't consume his entire existence. Learning from what happened to Tella, he manages to help him to release all that pent-up frustration, and by defeating Rubicante, he's truly free to be himself, to be Edge. And that is, in my opinion, a truly impressive thing that I did not catch on my playthrough of the game the first time, and only saw after I went back on and started writing the script for this entire thing. And Edge is someone who I really appreciate, and I'm happy was in the game, and I really wish that his whole shtick with Rydia actually goes somewhere. I will not know, seeing as how I haven't actually played the after years, because I want to play all of the games chronologically in the way that they released, so I'm not gonna know what happens to his tale until I actually play that game. But from what I saw, and from what he did in the game, he is funny, at least to me. He is crass, but he actually cares for people, and without him, a lot of characters wouldn't actually have the opportunity to show that they've grown. He shows the growth and development of everybody else around him by him not being all that great of a guy to begin with, and even for most of the remainder of the game, actually, now that I speak it out loud. Damn. And that only leaves us with the last and remaining thing that I want to talk about. Golbez. Golbez. You know, it just sounds weird calling him Golbez. Well, because, if you know, you know, and if you don't know, I'll tell you in just a bit, but calling him Golbez when I know his true name, for those of you who don't know, it's Theodore, the guy I mentioned a while back, or like a few paragraphs ago. But, yeah, Golbez and Theodore are the same person. Not really, but yes. Golbez is this bloated, oversized expression of Theodore's hatred and his desire for all of these people who let his and Cecil's parents to just die. If Theodore didn't have that darkness within him, Zimes would never have been able to take control over him, in a similar way how if Cain didn't have those pent-up feelings inside of him, Golbez wouldn't have been able to take over him. And yes, I suppose that now that I say it, Golbez and Theodore are not the same person. They are different characters, they're different people. Golbez is this manifestation of power, of this indomitable foe that stands in front of you. He is like the boogeyman. He is the one responsible for all the tragedies and the thousands of dead people by the hands of Baron and his army, and by Cain, by anybody who's done anything wrong by now. It was because of Golbez. And if it was because of Golbez, it was because of Zemus. I know it is a cliched thing in storytelling for the villain to have actually been controlled by a way more powerful and evil presence all along, i.e. similar to Zandi in the previous game in FF3. Weird, that they did the same thing twice, but I'm not gonna blame them, or I might have not done better, Anyway, Theodore left Cecil. He left him alone, and under the influences of Zemus grew to be this dark wizard. His story is so much alike Cecil's that it's like Cecil's is imitating his older brother. Cecil became a Dark Knight, a being who sacrifices, as I mentioned before, himself for more power, to grow stronger. And the same way how Theodore became this dark, evil wizard, abusing the dark arts to further his goals and collect the crystal so that he can annihilate all life on the blue planet for the hatred of someone else. But because Cecil had people around him, they managed to help him, pull him out of that darkness, which Golbez did not have. Theodore didn't have that, until he did. Until Cecil talked with his uncle, Fusoya, the brother of their father, and they went back down. They stopped the giant golem and infiltrated it. They faced Golbez, and with Fusoya's power, they finally unshackled him from the control of Zemus, and racked up with all that guilt and realization that Cecil is his brother. Golbez, and I mean now Theodore, actually wanted to repent. He wanted to do what Cecil did. He wanted to atone for what he did. But it was too late for him. It wasn't too late for him to change, but his actions were so immense. He was under the influence of Zemus for so long that now the crystals would not answer his call when the time called for it. For however powerful he was still using the powers of Golbez to fight back against Zemus. And as we were told time and time again, the dark powers cannot be used to defeat darkness. Golbez cannot defeat Zemus, even if Fusoya was by his side, even if he was the strongest wizard in the land. Only Cecil could accomplish this. Only Cecil could complete their shared arc and be the complete version of what they strive to be, of what Final Fantasy IV is all about. Cecil finally accomplishes what this entire game was building up towards. He takes the crystals, he uses their power to strip Zemus down to zero mass, to reveal his weakness, and with his party members, with the connections that he's been building this entire game, with Cain, Rosa, Rydia, Edge, all five of them collectively are this light. They are the end result of someone who finally manages to face their own ego and their own darkness, and manages to be better at the end of their whole arc. Better for it, in fact. And I believe that that's it. That's what Final Fantasy IV wants to tell us. It's the fact that even if we've done wrongs in our past, and if we see that the actions that we're taking are leading us astray, are destroying us and are hurting those around us, no matter how deeply in it we are, we always will have that choice to not do that anymore. We can do the heel turn. We can close that door. We can exit this pit that we've placed ourselves in, and it's all in our head, be it because of our own mistakes or by the influence of others over us. It is only by connecting to more people to people that can understand us and that care about us, that we can see what we were doing was wrong and climb out of that pit. That is something that is deeply profound, and I am impressed that a game from so long ago, before I was even born, is managing to talk to me and speak to me in such a way. It is the very thing that prompted me to talk about these games. This is the thing that prompted me to do this whole thing for the past hour and who knows how long, to ramble on about these fictional characters that have grown to mean so much more to me.
Farewell, my brother.
I liked Final Fantasy IV, and it is definitely a game that I will revisit eventually someday. I really want to play it again, after I've probably played all the other games and before I play the after years. But I'm really excited, and I'm really looking forward to what type of adventure is awaiting for me underneath that giant V of Final Fantasy V. I wanna see the tale of the Wanderer. I wanna see his battle against the Void. I really am in awe with this series, and my excitement, I cannot contain it. I just had to talk about it. And to those of you who actually stuck around and heard me ramble on about like these old games that mean so much to me, and I hope to you, seeing as you're here, I hope that when the time comes and I wanna eventually talk about Final Fantasy V, that you might come by this campfire of mine and hear my thoughts on that game as well. But until then, I hope that you have a great rest of your day.